the designs she did. How did she get those? Or how did she...
Here we go.
Wildlife trade has always been one of the most efficient ways to transmit potentially deadly viruses.
Known as COVID-19, rapidly spread.
When wild animals from different parts of the world are held in close proximity with weakened immune systems due to stress,
will China finally be forced to take the necessary steps? Madam Secretary General, the floor is yours.
By IFA and Freeland on preventing pandemics.
I don't want to be the last chief to enjoy all of this.
COVID-19 has changed our world. The way we live, our economy, our health systems, everything. COVID-19 will not be forgotten. To make sure that we never go through this again, we need to understand why it happened. COVID-19 and other zoonotic outbreaks were transmitted to people from wild animals that were taken from or pushed out of their natural environment. Some transmitted the virus directly to people, while others transmitted it through domesticated animals. And this is not the first time. SIV jumped from a primate to a human and became HIV. SARS jumped from a civet being sold on a menu. MERS from a camel. Bird flu jumped from wild birds. Ebola from bats. There are countless other viruses waiting to be unleashed if we don't change our relationship with nature. And the next outbreak could hit us much harder. Experts agree, rising wildlife trade, industrial farming, and dwindling wilderness have brought people into closer, unnatural contact with wild and captive-bred animals. We can prevent more pandemics by addressing their root causes, and that is exactly what our campaign, End Pandemics, is doing. End Pandemics has grown into a global campaign with over 70 organizations from every corner of the world. We are actively implementing a 4-part plan. We're training frontline protectors of nature across the globe. We are helping officers identify and stop trafficking of wild animals and their viruses across borders. We are helping impoverished communities adopt sustainable livelihoods. And we are educating youth and the public to stop buying and selling wild animals and to support the closing of commercial wildlife markets. And we are making progress. lawmakers have invited us to help strengthen environmental regulations. Global media have transmitted our message to over 700 million people. And now corporations are starting to get involved, sponsoring us and sharing our message. The vaccine for COVID-19 may not work against the next virus. Stimulus packages will amount to expensive band-aids that need frequent changing if we do not address the root causes. Join us. With your support, we can prevent pandemics because our lives and economies depend on it. Well, welcome back to the Freeland Film Festival, Beyond Pandemics. This is day 3, it's the final day. Just to remind you, this is a hybrid event, so you can watch these films on Eventive. It's a platform you can find through our website, easy to find, freeland.org. Go through there, shows you the program, how to get the passes, but we're also showing the films in person here at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand here in Bangkok. I'm Steve Gelster, I'm the founder of Freeland. I'm here with Molly Farrell, our fantastic film festival producer, and just want to reflect a little bit for a few minutes before we get into today's wonderful program of new films on what we've seen so far and what we're gonna see next. The reason we do this film festival is to support our campaigns, because we know that storytelling is super important to affect positive change. And also, with this particular discussion on pandemics, it's been dominated largely by scientists and politicians, and that can get confusing. People lose trust or don't know what's going on, and so we tried to cut through all that and explain through these stories, why do pandemics happen, and how can we prevent the next one? So, Molly, all I can say is, I sat through 9 hours of films yesterday, and while I am a Netflix binge watcher, I usually don't go that far, and I never got bored. I really liked the films, and I really loved the discussions with the film directors, who I think just put so much passion and energy into creating these films. I'm so glad they joined. I was particularly energized by The Fever, as well as Tigre Gente, and also I can never pronounce it correctly, and I'm sorry, but the film that Farhan... Thank you.
Hani Tok, Our Food Table,
yeah.
also fantastic film.
And the discussion with the filmmaker and the star of the film. So, these panel discussions are on Facebook Live, and we're recording them. You can still watch them, and you can still see these films. But I am so glad we do this film festival, because I think this is part of an arsenal of any civil society organization or alliance, in this case, End Pandemics, to move the needle. Any thoughts on films that you saw or that we're going to see that you want to highlight?
Well, I agree that the discussions after the films were incredible and really highlighted some interesting things for me about the films. Hani Tok was just, if I'm pronouncing that right, was a really interesting film, and not only talked about kind of the history of the colonial behavior in Canada and in British Columbia, but what's happening today. And I think that's really relevant for people to learn about today, what's going on and kind of how to be part of ending the colonial cycle that's been going on there for so long.
Right. It blew me away. By the way, we're fully vaccinated, tested recently. We're still socially distant here, and we're being safe here at the club. But yeah, that blew me away in the film, that there's people who can still to this day buy rights to mineral deposits within this indigenous group's territory. They were showing it online, and they're just kind of forgetting about the promises they made about keeping that area sacred and protected.
Right, they call it free entry, and I guess that's not going on in a lot of states in Canada now, but it's still going on there. So they're pushing through the film for for that to be changed and to make sure that this protected area stays safe and the areas around that as well, and that Indigenous consultation is honored. But it's an ongoing struggle. So I think that was a really important topic. The film is really interesting and shows you a lot about that, and it's also just beautiful. So I thought the discussion after that, though, which you can see, it's recorded on our Facebook page, was really valuable and worth listening to.
Yeah. What did you think about, I mean, the fever blew me away because I didn't realize that it was going to say what it did say about certain institutions and certain companies. And I guess I was not surprised later to hear during the panel discussion with the director that like German TV and others won't run it. And it sounds like the pharmaceutical companies also issued a petition against the film. What did you think about all that?
To me, it was a shocking story. You know, we've heard of malaria and it being a huge problem. I didn't realize quite how widespread it is, and how the solution to the problem that they're really showing in the film is that there's this plant that's available, which, you know, parts of that plant that are extracted and put into medicine are then imported into Africa from other countries, from Europe, I guess, a lot of times, and into African countries, and yet that plant can be grown right there, and people can take it, and that information, it's almost like it's being kept from people. It's definitely not widely available, and they're trying to push for it being more widely available and spreading the word about that, because it could save so many lives. And it seems because of economic interests, it's not.
Yeah, here's this plant right there in Africa that you can grow, and if you take it whole, it's actually more powerful than the anti-malarial pill that derives from it, that's produced in Europe and brought in and making billions of dollars. That's crazy. And the woman, who is shocking, like the heroine of the film, you know, she's destitute and trying to get money, and nobody's supporting it. So I thought the film was, it made me think about our campaign, because we're also trying to point out that the long-term vaccine against pandemics is nature protection. You know, if you look at where these zoonotic outbreaks happen, it's from messing with Mother Nature, but prevention doesn't make people money. And I think that's part of the problem. I related to that.
Yeah, it was also really interesting to me to learn through that film that a lot of agricultural practices that were brought in, like rice farming and I guess different types of brick production, are actually helping to spread malaria because of the pools of water that are required in producing those things. And so it's kind of this idea about how we put nature out of balance, and it affects us because of some of the practices and industries that aren't sustainable, or that are brought into places that they hadn't been in before from outside. So that was also really interesting to me.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, before we show any of the films, I mean, any highlights you want to point out? You've watched all these films.
Yeah, I have. And gosh, we have really great films coming up today. So the one that we're about to watch is Costa Rica, Animals Return. And I think it's really interesting to see how an ecosystem can kind of regenerate and become healthy again. And that's a really positive story that it's really nice to hear, because it is possible, and you see that it's possible in the film. Costa Rica is a country where they've done a lot of really good work in protecting natural spaces, and it's just beautiful. On top of that, you see a lot of beautiful nature and wildlife. We have Blood Scales. Blood Scales is a very interesting film that definitely relates to our pandemics conversation, right? And how nature and pandemics can be related.
Yeah, and I saw enough of it to know it was a good film. I'm looking forward to seeing all of it today. But is is it mainly focused on pangolin trafficking?
Pangolin trafficking,
Right.
yeah.
The most
pangolin
heavily
trafficking.
trafficked mammal in the world.
Yep, yeah, and I think the pangolin is seen as this kind of not charismatic species by a lot of people. Like, we don't even really know what it is. A lot of us, when we see a photo of a pangolin, it's hard to connect with it because most of us haven't ever seen one. And I felt like I fell in love with pangolins through this film, so I'm sure everyone else will as well. Gosh, we have Dark Green, which is a fascinating film about exploration.
In the Amazon,
In
right?
the Amazon, this guy goes out alone for a couple days into the Amazon and just experiences what it's like to be there and connect with the wild. And I think that's a beautiful experience. And the cinematography is just fantastic in that as well. So that's wonderful and just an immersive experience of the Amazon. Then we have another Amazon film, which I think is really special, made by a filmmaker who's from an indigenous community in the Amazon, and how the community responds to the pandemic by actually returning. It's called The Return, returning to traditional lifestyle in the forest and going deeper into the jungle, and you see how they live, and it's this insider's view, right? Because he's from that community, and you really feel that and you experience that. So I think that's really cool.
We've got an animated short called Pongo the Stolen Orangutan, which is by one of our advisory board members, Colin. I know that one's good. I've seen that. And then, opening night, for those who didn't see it, you should watch it. Big picture film, Grain of Sand in the Machine. And we had a talk with the director, really philosophical, really big picture about, I think it's in line with our campaign. Like, let's think about why this happened and not just chase it. But we're also bookending it. The final movie tonight's called Until We Live Again, which it's, I think, therapeutic and cathartic for anybody. We've all gone through COVID-19. This guy interviews people all over the world through Zooms and brings it together and shows us how other people coped. So I think that's definitely worth sticking around for. And then, of course, the Last Horns of Africa. Any comments on that?
Oh, well, that's just an action-packed film about rhino horn and the rhino poaching crisis. And I think it's suspenseful. You really see what's going on. You get a real inside view into the action of what's going on, and people who are working to protect the rhinos, and definitely worth watching as well, and an exciting film to watch. Hopeful and also intense. And yeah, it's definitely eye-opening, so worth watching. And then there's two other shorts that we didn't mention that are fantastic. One's Last of My Kind. That one's only going to be here at the FCCT, which is actually a sort of memorial service in a church for endangered species that have gone extinct.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's a very surprising way to tell this story, and I found it so emotionally impactful. And moving and just really surprising. So
yeah, I love
whoever
that.
can come to the FCCT for that, that's in our shorts program, 3:45 to 4:30, and it's only going to be here. So please come join us for that. And this one, I don't know how to pronounce La Forêt d'Ebo. Also, fascinating story about someone who's protecting, a wild space, a guard of the forest, and very, very interesting, very immersive as well in the nature. And some of these films, I just feel like it's like a treat to be able to experience the nature of these places. And a lot of us who aren't able to get out into nature or travel to places right now, it's like transports you to the places, and it's really beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think collectively, these films are basically celebrating the beauty of Earth and the power of nature to help us recover. And so with that, maybe we should start showing them.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. We'll get the film started here, and then we'll do a panel discussion, a couple different discussions today.
Yep. A couple discussions, and we will have a live stream at the end of today for our closing ceremony, award ceremony.
Right.
So please join us for
Trophies
that
are right back there in
tonight.
the back of the room.
Yeah.
Good. We'll pop the bottle of champagne then too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Good. We'll see you in a little bit later.